I am Muhammad Ryan Hidayat, and this is my video of Project 2 for the subject classroom management. And in the Project 2, I will do two parts. In the first part, I will do a presentation with the given topics, and in the part 2, I will do the case studies. I will solve the problems, all of the problems. Okay, and for the first, I will do the first part first. Let's get it started. Okay, first topic of the part one is teaching tolerance. What is tolerance? Tolerance is the willingness to accept and respect people whose beliefs, culture, appearances, or behaviors may differ from our own. It does not mean agreeing with every viewpoint, but rather recognizing that diversity is a natural and valuable part of society. In schools, tolerance encourages students to cooperate, communicate effectively, and, and appreciate different perspectives. A tolerant classroom creates a safe learning environment where every student feels respected and valued. Why teaching tolerance matters? Modern societies are becoming increasingly diverse. Students encounter people from various ethnic, religious, social, and economic backgrounds. Learning tolerance helps them interact positively with others and prepares them for life in a multicultural world. These are the key benefits. First, reduces conflict and discrimination, promotes mutual respect, encourages teamwork and cooperation, and last is creates a positive learning environment. Diversity in the classroom. Every classroom contains different forms of diversity. Students may differ in their culture, religion, economic status, value, interests, learning styles, and abilities. These differences can enrich classroom discussions and learning experiences. However, if students do not understand or respect these differences, diversity may become a source of misunderstanding and conflict. Understanding prejudice. Prejudice refers to negative attitudes, judgments, or assumptions about individuals or groups based on their characteristic rather than their actual behavior. Research shows that children become aware of differences at a very young age. Without proper guidance, these observations may develop into stereotypes and prejudice that affect how they treat others. Factors that reinforce prejudice. According to research, prejudice has often reinforced by several social influences: family members and home environment, peer groups and friendships, societal and governmental institutions, language and communication patterns. These influences shape children's beliefs and attitudes toward people who are different from themselves. How schools can reduce prejudice? Although there is no guaranteed method to eliminate prejudice completely, schools play a significant role in reducing it. Educational experiences can help students think critically, understand others, and challenge stereotypes. Teachers can create learning opportunities that encourage respect, empathy, and cooperation among students. Cognitive skills and tolerance. Students suggest that students with stronger cognitive abilities, especially problem solving and concept formation skills, are generally less likely to demonstrate prejudiced attitudes. When students learn to analyze situations carefully and consider multiple viewpoints, they become more open minded and accepting of diversity. Self concepts and tolerance. People who have a positive self concept and healthy self esteem tend to be more tolerant of others. They are less likely to feel threatened by differences and more likely to appreciate diversity. Therefore, teachers should help students develop confidence and a positive sense of self. Next, the role of school culture. Tolerance often becomes stronger when it's a normal part of the school environment. If respect, inclusion, and acceptance are consistently practiced by teachers and students, these values become part of everyday behavior. As David Schumann stated, schools can combat prejudice more effectively by simply doing a better job of educating students. Next is strategy. Strategy 1. Give students choices. Teachers can promote respect for individual differences by giving students choices in how they complete assignments. For example, students may learn the same content through worksheets, games, discussion, or multimedia activities. Providing choices recognizes that students learn in different ways and encourages independence and responsibility. Strategy 2. Use open-ended activities. Open-ended activities allow students to solve problems, to express ideas in multiple ways. These activities demonstrate that there is often more than one correct approach. When teachers value different responses, students learn to appreciate diverse ways of thinking and problem solving. Strategy 3. Encourage alternative approaches. Students sometimes ask if they can complete a task differently. Teachers should consider these requests carefully rather than automatically rejecting them. Allowing alternative approaches when appropriate helps students feel respected and encourages creativity and critical thinking. Strategy 4. Celebrate student differences. Teachers should provide opportunities for students to share their interests, talents, cultures, and experiences with classmates. When students learn about one another's background, they often develop greater understanding and appreciation, which reduces intolerance and prejudice. Strategy 5. Highlight the value of diversity. Teachers can promote positive attitudes toward diversity through everyday comments and observation. Simple statements that recognize unique ideas, perspective, or contribution can reinforce the message that differences are valuable. Students gradually learn that diversity strengthens the classroom community. Strategy 6. Reflect on teacher behavior. Teachers should regularly examine their own attitudes and interactions with students. Unconscious biases may affect how teachers communicate with different learners. Self-reflection helps educators ensure that all students receive equal respect, support, and opportunities regardless of their background. Last is conclusion. The conclusion is teaching tolerance is essential for creating inclusive classrooms and preparing students to live and work in diverse societies. By valuing differences and promoting respect, educators help build more understanding and peaceful communities. Okay, next I will do a presentation regarding helping students handle anger, frustration, and aggression. Understanding the emotions. Anger is a natural, healthy emotional response to perceived threats, injustice, or unmet needs. The problem is never the feeling itself. It is how the feeling gets expressed. Frustration emerges when a student feels repeatedly blocked from reaching a goal, whether academic, social, or personal. Aggression is a behavioral outcome, verbal or physical, that often signals unaddressed anger and frustration over time. Why students struggle to regulate this emotion? The adolescent's brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex responsible for impulse control, is still developing well into early adulthood. This means many students genuinely lack the neurological tools to regulate intense emotion on their own. Add to this a limited emotional vocabulary, difficult home environments, or unmet academic and social needs, and emotional outbursts become far more understandable even if still unacceptable in their expression. Common triggers in the school setting. Most student anger does not appear out of nowhere. In school settings, common triggers include repeated academic failure, conflict with peers such as teasing or exclusion, feeling that rules or teacher are unfair, sudden changes to routine, and the persistent sense of not being heard or respected. Recognizing this trigger is the first step toward prevention. Warning signs to watch for. Anger rarely erupts without warning. Early physical cues include clenched fists, a flushed face, a restlessness, or sudden withdrawal. As tension escalates, students may raise their voice, make verbal threats, or begin destroying objects. Educators who learn to read these early signals have a much greater window for the de-escalation before a situation becomes a crisis. Teacher's role. Prevention first. The most powerful tool a teacher has is a warm, predictable classroom environment. When students feel safe, seen, and respected, emotional incidents decrease significantly. This means setting clear and consistent expectations, offering genuine positive reinforcement, regularly checking in with individual students, and building in movement or sensory breaks throughout the day. In the moment strategies, when a student begins to escalate, the teacher's own calm in the most important intervention. Lower your voice rather than raising it. Give the student physical space and avoid creating an audience. Use short, clear language and resist the urge to lecture. Offering a simple choice, would you like to step outside for a moment or stay and work quietly, can restore a student's sense of control and reduce the need to fight back. Teaching emotional regulation skills. Long-term change happens when students are taught concrete skills, not just told to calm down techniques such as deep breathing, the feelings thermometer, counting the time before responding, or using a designed cool down space in the classroom give students real strategies they can reach for in difficult moments. Journaling and drawing are also effective outlets, particularly for students who struggle to verbalize their emotion. Building emotional vocabulary. Research consistently shows that students who can name their feelings are far better equipped to manage them. Rather than accepting "I am angry" as the end of the conversation, educators can gently expand a student's vocabulary. I feel disrespected, I feel ignored, I feel overwhelmed. Omission charts, daily mood check-ins, and classroom study discussion are simple, powerful tools for building this vocabulary over time. Restorative approaches. After an incident, punitive responses alone rarely address what caused the behavior. A restorative conversation asks what happened, who was affected, and how. What can be done to make it right? This approach shifts the focus from punishment to responsibility and repair, helping students develop empathy and accountability rather than resentment. Collaborating with parents and guardians, effective support for students does not end at the classroom door. Reaching out to parents and guardians early, not only when a crisis occurs, builds trust and consistency. Sharing the strategies used at school, asking about the home context without judgment, and working together on a unified approach can make a significant difference in students' emotional progress. When to refer for further support. There are times when custom strategies are not enough. If a student's anger episodes are frequent, intense, and difficult to de-escalate, or if there is any risk of harm to the students or other, it is important to involve a school counselor or psychologist. Behavior linked to trauma, grief, or underlying mental health concerns requires professional support beyond what a teacher can provide alone. Key takeaways. Angers and frustration are normal parts of human experience. Aggression, however, is a learned behavior, and what is learned can be unlearned. Students do not need more punishment, they need skills, safe relationships, and adults who believe they are capable of change. When teachers, counselors, and families work together with patience and consistency, the results can be transformative. For the last topic, I will do the disruptive behavior. What is disruptive behavior? Disruptive behavior refers to any action that interrupts the flow of learning for the students, their peers, or the teacher. It can be as minor as constant talking out of turn or as serious as verbal aggression and refusal to cooperate. What these behaviors share is that they signal something unmet needs, emotional distress, boredom, or lack of connection to the learning environment. Understanding the original is more predictive than simply stopping the behavior. Common causes and triggers. Disruptive behavior rarely happens without reason. Academic difficulty, peer conflict, the desire for attention, family stress, trauma, lack of sleep, and undiagnosed learning differences can all manifest as disruption in the classroom. A student who cannot complete a task, for example, may act out rather than appear incompetent in front of their peers. How it affects the classroom. Frequent disruptions reduce instructional time, increase teacher stress, and negatively affect the academic performance and emotional well-being of other students. Left unaddressed, they can erode the trust and safety that a healthy classroom depends on. Prevention comes first. Most effective response to disruptive behavior is one that happens before disruption occurs. Clear routines, consistent expectation, mutual respect, and genuine teacher-student relationship give students far less reason to act out. When students feel known and valued, the need to disrupt decreases significantly. In moment responses, when disruption occurs, the first few seconds matter. Reacting with frustration or public correction tends to escalate the situation. A quiet word, a calm redirection, and a non-verbal signal addresses the behavior without drawing the whole class attention. Giving the student a face-saving way out is almost always more effective than forcing direct confrontation. Restorative rather than punitive. Traditional responses like detention or exclusion address the symptom but rarely the cause. Restorative practices shift the focus to repairing relationships. A simple restorative conversation asks, "What was happening for you? How did how did it affect others? What can you do differently next time?" The hold students accountable while treating them as capable of growth. When to involve others, professionals. When behavior is persistent despite consistent intervention, poses a safety risk, or appears linked to trauma or a learning difficulty, classroom strategies alone are not enough. School counselors, psychologists, and special education coordinators can conduct assignments and help develop a more comprehensive, individualized support plan. Key takeaways. Destructive behavior is best understood as communication, not a character flaw. Students who disrupt are often students who are struggling the most. The most effective educators are those who look past the behavior to the net benefit, respond with calm and consistency, and build classrooms where every student feels they truly belong. Okay, so that's all for the part one, and I will continue to the part two. Okay, so this is the part two of the project two. I will solve case studies or problems, and let's get started. The first problem or problem one. Miss Johnson is a fifth grade teacher who has been teaching for over 10 years. This year, she has a student named Alex who frequently displays aggressive behavior. Alex often interrupts lessons, talks back to the teacher, and sometimes even becomes physically aggressive toward his classmates. Miss Johnson has tried various strategies to manage Alex's behavior, such as setting clear rules and consequences, positive reinforcement for good behavior, and speaking with Alex privately to understand the root of his aggression. However, despite her efforts, Alex's behavior has not improved significantly. The question is, what classroom management techniques can Miss Johnson implement to adjust Alex's aggressive behavior? Okay, the first strategy is functional behavior assessment. Rather than continuing to respond to Alex's aggression after it occurs, Miss Johnson should begin by systematically identifying what triggers it. A functional behavior assessment helps the teachers, ideally in collaboration with a school counselor, determine the specific antecedents, behaviors, and consequences connected to Alex's outbursts. If Alex becomes aggressive most often during group tasks or when he perceives criticism, the environment can be adjusted to reduce those triggers before they escalate. Understanding the function of the behavior, whether it is to gain attention, avoid the task, or assert control, is the necessary foundation for any effective intervention. For the strategy is a personalized behaviors per plan with self-monitoring. Once patterns are identified, Miss Johnson can work with Alex to create a simple individualized behavior plan, giving Alex ownership over the plan rather than imposing rules on him, taps into his need for autonomy, and makes compliance more likely. Paired with a self-monitoring tool such as daily check-in card, where Alex rates his own behavior at the end of each period, this strategy builds self-awareness over time. Research consistently shows that students who monitor their own behavior develop greater capacity for self-regulation than those who only receive external correction. For the strategy 3 is collaborative problem solving and relationship building. Miss Johnson should consider adopting a collaborative problem-solving approach developed by the Dr. Ross Green, which treats aggressive behavior as the result of lacking skills rather than willful deviance. In a calm, private moment, not after an incident, Miss Johnson invite Alex to share his perspective on what makes classroom situation difficult for him. Then they work together to find mutually acceptable solution. This is not about lowering expectation. It is about solving the right problem. Students like Alex who feel genuinely heard and respected by their teacher are significantly less likely to rely on aggression as their primary response to frustration. Next, for the problem 2, the problem is Mr. Smith is a 7th grade math teacher who has noticed that several students in his class frequently engage in off-task behavior during lessons. These students often daydream, chat with classmates, or use their phones instead of focusing on their work. Despite Mr. Smith's attempt to redirect their attention and provide engaging activities, the problem persists. This off-task behavior is disrupting the learning environment and affecting the overall performance of the class. The question is, what strategies can Mr. Smith use to increase on-task behavior and decrease off-task behavior? Okay, first strategy is active learning and varied instructional design. If students are consistently drifting off task, the first question worth asking is whether the lesson structure itself is inviting enough engagement. Passive instruction, where students listen for extended periods, is one of the strongest predictors of task behavior, particularly in adolescents. Mr. Smith can restructure his lessons to include shorter instructional segments followed by active tasks, partner problem solving, mini whiteboards, quick polling, or think pair share activities. When students know they will be asked to do something with the content every few minutes, passive disengagement becomes much harder to sustain. Next strategy for the strategy 2 is strategic proximity and environmental management. Mr. Smith's physical presence in the classroom is one of the most underused classroom management tools available to him. Rather than teaching exclusively from the front of the room, moving through the classroom during instruction, pausing near students who are beginning to drift, making brief eye contact, or placing a hand near a phone with the same word communicates awareness and attentiveness without interrupting the flow of the lesson. Additionally, establishing a clear and consistently enforced phone policy at the start of each class, such as a designed phone storage area, removes the temptation before it becomes a problem. For the next strategy is goal setting and accountability structures. Mr. Smith can introduce a brief goal settings routine at the start of each lesson, where students write down one specific learning target they intend to achieve by the end of class. At the close of the lesson, students reflect briefly on whether they met it. This creates a personal stake in the session that external redirection alone cannot replicate. Pairing this with a classroom point system or group accountability structure where the class collectively earns recognition for sustained on-task behavior, leverage positive peer pressure in a constructive direction rather than allowing it to full distraction. For the last problem, or the problem 3, is the problem is Miss Brown is an 8th grade English teacher who is facing challenges with a student named Jake. Jake frequently exhibits disruptive behavior in class, such as talking out of turn, making inappropriate comments, and distracting other students. Despite Miss Brown's attempts to manage the behavior through verbal warnings and setting changes, Jake's behavior has not improved. This destructive behavior is affecting the learning environment and making it difficult for other students to concentrate on their work. What specific strategies can Miss Brown implement to manage Jane's destructive behavior is the question. First strategy is plain ignoring combined with private redirection. Verbal warning issue publicity can unintentionally reinforce Jake's behavior by giving him the audience and attention he may be seeking. Miss Brown can experiment with planned ignoring for minor disruptions, deliberately withholding erection when Jake makes an off-task comment, while ensuring that positive behavior is acknowledged promptly and genuinely. For behaviors that cannot be ignored, redirection should happen privately and quietly, crouching beside the Jake's desk and speaking in a low voice rather than calling him out across the classroom. Removing the social reward of an audience significantly reduces the appeal of disruption for attention-seeking students. The next strategy is one effective and often overlooked strategy is channeling Jake's energy into a constructive role. Students who disrupt out of a need for significance respond well when that need is met legitimately. Miss Brown might assign Jake a meaningful classroom responsibility, discussion facilitator, materials coordinator, or peer reviewer. That gives him a recognized position within the group. When students identify shifts from destructive one to someone with a role to play, their behavior that once served the social function often diminishes naturally. Last strategy is the behavior contract with clear expectations and positive incentives. A written behavior contract developed together with Jake rather than handed down to him creates mutual clarity and shared accountability. The contract should identify 2 or 3 specific observable behaviors Jake agrees to work on, such as raising his hand before speaking or keeping comments relevant to the lesson, and outline both the support Miss Brown will provide and the positive outcomes Jake earned through consistent effort. Involving Jake's parents or guardians in the process extends accountability beyond the classroom and signals to Jake that the adults in his life are aligned and invested in his success. Okay, so that's all for my project 2 video regarding part 1 in the for presentation and part 2 for case studies, and thank you for watching.